It's a brand new day right here on Channels Television, as well as Nigeria. It's our Democracy Day, June 12, where we remember the very moment in 1993 when MKO Abiola had won that election, or the election took place, but it wasn't declared winner, and all the potpourri of issues that went through that particular season, including people dying for the sake of democracy, is going to be the core of our conversation, and how far we've come after 26, I should say, years of uninterrupted, unbroken democracy in Nigeria. I'm Jeffrey Uzonga.
Indeed, it is June the 12th, Democracy Day, where we mark 26 years of unbroken democracy. At the heart of democracy is liberty, freedom, and, the fulcrum of democracy is also knowledge. So there is a collective responsibility of everyone governed and the governors, as the case may be. Welcome to the perfect morning starter, where we help you to make sense of it all and we make your day as bright as possible. I am Bukola Koka.
Bukola, one of the reasons I respect Nigerians and Nigeria's resilience in that sense is because I was a teenager in 1993. I clearly can remember a lot of things as a teenager in 1993. As a young teenager, I thought this country will blow up. It felt like we were in a bubble, in a balloon, and all that was needed was just a little needle to just cause a harm. It was a very, Gen Z will not understand what we're saying, I'm sorry. But that period was, Nigeria united and came together to say, this is the man we want to lead us. And then all kinds of funny happenings took place on that particular day and the days after. You know the story, you've read it, some of us lived through it. Some people are at the vanguard of fighting for that moment. And so today, it's going to be a potpourri of issues we'll be dealing with on the program, from those who, are heroes of that moment, beginning with MKO Abiola himself, Kudirat, and everybody who was a part of that struggle, as well as certain things that happened under the Sani Abacha dictatorship. At some point, we're going to bring in some people that were accused of being part of the phantom coup. You wouldn't want to miss today's conversation. And young people as well will be right here on the table to explore the conversation as far as our democracy is concerned, Bukola.
And since you're going down memory lane, Jeffrey, one of the benefits... I
would have asked you how old you are, but you reveal your age.
One of the benefits of appreciating democracy is, having a fair knowledge of what happened during the military rule. I was a bit of a teenager myself, in the 90s, and I can recall, and living close again to Dodan Barracks as a teenager, I could recall, gunshots being heard, from Dodan Barracks, Balinde back then. And, one of the other things that makes you appreciate democracy is when you saw, the intimidation of the military against civilians. You see, people who went against the civilians for the slightest thing were told to do frog jump back then. You could recall the sense of fear, of people who are unable to express themselves as much as you're able to express yourself with some form of, freedom at this time, even though there are conversations about the shrinking of the civic space. But that is the essence of the continuing conversations that we now have the opportunity to have from the place of knowledge amid democracy. And that's why there's every reason to celebrate Democracy Day today. Jeffrey has shared some of the high points of what we're going to be doing today on the program. And you are the fourth anchor, as we always say. Of course, we also have our question of the day today, Jeffrey. But first, we're going down memory lane.
Yeah, just before we go down memory lane, let's remind the people there was supposed to be a presidential nationwide broadcast that has now been cancelled because the president will be at the chambers of the National Assembly at the joint session to make his speech at that particular hallowed chamber. So we should be expecting by noon the president should be at the National Assembly to make his speech. That's why we're all waiting for the broadcast. But last night, the presidency canceled that broadcast and said the president will rather take that speech to the People's House, as the National Assembly is called, and present it to Nigeria, perhaps reading out his scorecard and remembering the journey, which he was an active participant of the struggle when we're all in the trenches against the military, when that annulment happened, and the succeeding events afterwards, as far as that is concerned. But our question of the day is simple, guys. It's a straightforward question. You can also do your rating if you want, and it's this. Is Nigeria's democracy safe in the hands of the current class or crop of politicians? Is Nigeria's democracy safe in the hands of the current class or crop of politicians? So look at the current crop of politicians, look at the current class of politicians. When you think of democracy, freedom, liberty, welfare, rule of law, and the many things that come to your mind when the word democracy is mentioned, when you look at the managers of the democracy, those who are power brokers today at the helm of affairs, from the president down to your local government chairman, is Nigeria safe in their hands? Let's have your reaction. Email, WhatsApp, as well as hashtag CTV Morning Brief on X. Bukola.
So don't forget, we're going to be having a conversation on the significance, the progress and challenges of our democracy in 26 years. We'll be talking also with, alleged coup plotters of the 1995 and 1997 coup. We'll be talking with them today. It's a conversation that you don't want to miss. We'll be looking at their challenges, their journey after more than 3 decades, of that allegation leveled against them. And of course, a panel of young persons will be coming up later on the show, to weigh in on democracy and youth inclusion in 26 years of unbroken democracy. So it's a packed show, a bumper one, as I always say. Let's go down memory lane now, and then we'll be right back.
It's a matter of a misunderstanding. He was not accurately informed. For example, there were talks about bribes there were allegations of bribery to NEC. I've already said anybody with proof of that allegation should go to court. Bribery of an electoral officer, of a public officer, is an offense, is really a felony under the law of Nigeria. The matter should be taken to a criminal court. And secondly, there were allegations that the turnout was low. That has been debunked. There were more voters during the presidential election than during the National Assembly elections. So that is not true either. There were allegations that the judiciary is being put into jeopardy or into ridicule. We were able to prove that neither of the 2 candidates went before any court. It was an illegal organization supposedly being sponsored by the government itself that took matters to court. That has nothing to do with us. There were allegations that large sums of money were spent, 2.1 billion naira. That was not true. I've denied it. The other candidate has denied it. In any case, there is no upper limit to the expenditure that can be incurred by any candidate in the presidential election or in any election under the law of Nigeria. All these are just trumped up charges, excuses as it were, not reasons. There is plenty of hope that there's no doubt at all that the president and the military government will leave office on the 27th of August. And there might be need to meet and discuss some details. And I'm always ready and willing to discuss details. This is not a civilian versus military situation. A preponderant majority of the Nigerian military and their family voted overwhelmingly for me in the last election. So there was no question of the military. There are quite a few, just a few officers who probably are unhappy about the changes. We will give them all the assurances they need. There is room for every Nigerian, especially the top officers who have been trained at tremendous cost to the taxpayers of Nigeria. The list of people which people have alleged have been prepared by me for dismissal or retirement is not true. I have no such list. We need all the soldiers we have in the Nigerian army, especially the senior ones who have been trained at considerable cost to the taxpayers of our country.
The matter of democracy there late Chief MKO Abiola, who paid the ultimate price, and in honor of whom Democracy Day in the last 6 or 7 years or so is now celebrated on June the 12th, to sort of commemorate the annulment of the 1993 presidential election, which he won, and of course, which the military president at that time has now spoken about in his latest book. So we're going to be reflecting on the happenings of that time, the legacy of the matter of democracy, late Chief MKO Abiola, the significance of the event, and some of the things that he spoke about in that interview conducted, by the way, by our chairman of Channels Media Group. How significantly have we moved from, the socio-economic challenges that Chief MKO Abiola fought for and indeed wanted to, change should he have become president at that time. Joining us to have this conversation, before that time, we'll be having our guests come on much later on. But don't forget, our question of the day is, our democracy safe in the hands of this current political class? You can respond to those questions to our WhatsApp channel, to our social media platform on X, hashtag CTV Morning Brief. And we have quite a lot to unpack for you this morning.
All right, in less than 10 minutes, we'll be bringing in our guests who will be doing justice to the conversation, as a matter of fact. But that was MKO Abiola responding to some of the allegations leveled against him on why the election was, initially started with stopping to release the results, and then eventually ended up in an annulment. So this was him responding to some of the allegations that were leveled against him about spending. He said, look, let's even say spending is an issue. There's no cap to spending in that. As at that time, he talked about some other forms of irregularity. He took them one after the other. And he also talked about the fears of some of the military officers who were used to being in power, concerned about their forceful retirement and all of that. He told them there's no cause for alarm. From his words to our listening mouth, can clearly see IBB then has said, August, I'm living here. And well, that was never going to happen in terms of how MKO was envisioning. IBB later left government. Abacha, Oneshanikon took over. Abacha took power via a coup, and then you know how everything ended. So today we're going to reflect, as Bukola said, the legacy of all of this. But let's get to the dailies, the ones we can quickly catch up with before we bring in our guest. Vanguard newspaper is our first daily. Vanguard newspaper is our very first daily that we'll be looking at today on the program. Vanguard leads with, of course, Democracy Day. 32 years after June 12, democracy declining under APC. 32 years after June 12, democracy declining under APC. That's coming from Arewa Consultative Forum. That's ACF, the PDP, Afenifere, Onez Ndibo, and others. The writers, it's work in progress. Afenifere. Democratic ideals not yet entrenched. That's ACF. Electoral fraud, power grab, mockery of democracy. That's COP. That's a coalition of political parties. So this is what some interest group, pressure groups, socio-cultural, socio-political organizations are saying as far as their assessment of the democracy we're practicing is concerned. So they are starting it from the time of MKO Abiola, which was the freest, fairest. He won that election. I think we should almost refrain from saying presumed. The reason why we say he presumed, because he wasn't declared winner. The man who was meant to declare a winner did not declare a winner, and we know all that was responsible for that. Bukola, you have the next one.
Yes, indeed. And the next paper this morning is This Nigeria. This Nigeria newspaper, of course, is talking about events from Wednesday. We'll welcome you to APC when you decide, Tinubu tells FCT minister. Wike dismisses coalition against president in 2027, says it will fail. I wonder how the PDP will respond to this. Because, well, some members of the PDP are not entirely dismissing the coalition in that sense, unless the Wike department of the PDP is the group that you're talking about. But it's an interesting development. It's an interesting turn of democracy. Take a look at some other stories. Of course,
just before we leave,
Nigeria does not miss out on June 12, capturing June 12. There's something there right beside the picture on the front page. June 12, Igbo group seeks immortalization of Humphrey Nwosu. Of course, that conversation also trailed the release of IBB's memoirs just some months back.
Yeah, because I just wanted to drop my 2 cents on this weekend matter. It's one of the most amusing politics I've ever seen in my life, and it looked like a classic joke on all of them. And it's shameful, the kind of politics we play. Wike has good credentials in terms of his contribution to the PDP, but I think for morality's sake, he should be thinking of excusing himself. But I understand where it's coming from. He wants fairness in terms of the zoning. The president is still the president. He wanted South to be in charge of the presidency because the North has had their share for 8 years. So it's just a fair argument in terms of how fairness is looked like. But I don't think he has a moral right. Because I don't understand how one man would say, your coalition against this president will fail. The president will be re-elected. We're going to work for him. And then you turn and say to your party, you must produce a Southern president. Choose a struggle. Yes, on Wike, the Honorable Minister, Your Excellency, choose a struggle. That's why when the president said yesterday that Wike has not joined his party, Wike has joined your party in spirit. We all know he has joined your party in spirit. There's no, and it's not easy to not to know. The man speaks his mind. It's not something we're thinking about. So it's just his body to move. But not dictating to the party where his body is there and his spirit has left, I don't understand what that's why something looks like the PDP is not serious. Because the man is saying the coalition will fail, he's supporting the president, and yet he wants to wants to dictate a term to the PDP on how they should select who will run for presidency in 2027. It's just a joke to me. This politics, I think I listened to Reno yesterday also talking about the fact that he's a member of PDP but he works for APC. What kind of politicians are these? This is the problem with not having ideology. That's what is playing out now. Whether it's Wike, Reno, any person who plays this kind of politics, anybody who plays this kind of politics is a classic case, because where there are ideologies, you can't even imagine what is going on.
Jeffrey, I'd like you to relax and just leave that journalistic excellence for when we're going to be talking about the PDP and its woes. It's Democracy Day today, and I understand that some of our resource persons are on standby already. Let's welcome Mr. Samson Itodo, who has joined us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Samson Itodo is the executive director of IAGA Africa.
He joins us virtually.
He joins us virtually. And we also have Mr. Dayo Akintobi, media analyst, who joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Mr. Akintobi, I'm going to start with you. Mr. Itodo, you would have to unmute so that we can hear you. We couldn't hear you for a bit when you acknowledged the greeting. Mr. Itodo, please unmute. Okay, while we wait for Mr. Itodo to unmute, let's start with, let's have Mr. Samson Itodo. Mr. Itodo, please unmute.
I'm muted.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
While we wait for you to mute, I'm sure you began following from the beginning when we went down memory lane, to put up a soundbite from late Chief MKO Abiola, and some of the things that he talked about in that interview. He talked about, allegations of bribery of electoral officers. He talked about quite a number of other things, spending limit, and from some of those things that he said, we can also look at the Ekpetedo Declaration, which is popular for him risking it all, after which he was arrested. I'll just like to read from some of the things that he said in the Ekpetedo Declaration when he declared himself president. He talked about the ills of military rule leading to a nation fighting a civil war with itself, destabilized our nation as not before in its history, military rule impoverishing our people, and introduced dreadful trade in drugs, which has made our country's name an anathema in many parts of the world. Even in soccer, fans going to watch the Green Eagles display in America being made to suffer there needlessly because Nigeria's name is linked with credit card fraud and 419. I'm just wondering how much progress we've made from the ills of that time, which late Chief MKO spoke about, as against what it obtains today. Mr. Akitobi.
Well, when you look at the times in which Chief Abiola spoke back then, and you compare it today, I'd say we've grown in leaps and bounds, and we've made remarkable progress, although there's still a long way to go. One thing that's indisputable is the fact that military rule set Nigeria back decades and decades in progress. A lot of what Chief Abiola complained about were direct results of military rule. And I think the best thing that ever happened to Nigeria is getting the military out of administration and leadership. And in any democratic dispensation whatsoever in Nigeria's history, you'd see that we've made a whole lot more progress than when the military was in power. So the things the chief complained about, today we're in a lot better shape. We have stronger institutions. We've had electoral reform. We've got a legislature now. You know, we've got a judiciary that's still a work in progress, but at least to some extent we can claim that justice is being served at many levels a lot better than it was during the military. So I don't think there's any yardstick by which we can compare the two types of administrations, and I think it would be delusional to say that we haven't done a lot better under civilian rule than when we were in the military administration. Nigeria's international reputation has grown in leaps and bounds. I know that at one point the green passport was a blight on the international scene, but today I think it's a bit better regarded. I think internationally Nigerians are acquitting themselves admirably all over the world. I think we're doing well in terms of international trade and relations with other countries. We were a pariah state under the military. In any democratic dispensation, we're within the Committee of Nations, and we're generally better viewed. So I don't think there's any basis for comparison whatsoever. And I think many of the things the good chief spoke about then have improved markedly.
Mr. Itodo, I'd like you to respond to the same questions, particularly as it has to do with the socioeconomic challenges that the late chief spoke about in that soundbite that we played earlier on. How much progress do you think we have made significantly in terms of, bringing, the generality of the people out of poverty, progress in terms of economic reforms, and perhaps you also want to talk about institutional reforms as well.
Thank you very much. Please confirm you can hear me now.
Brilliant. We can hear you now.
Okay, so let me say happy Democracy Day to you all, and also to Nigerians in every part of the world. When I followed the earlier part of this program and I listened to the late Chief MKO Abiola speak, first I had a pride, and there was that, this reignition of national spirit, in me, because here was a man who understood the complexity of the Nigerian state and who wanted, to bring development through democratic and civil means. And you can clearly see from the remarks that he made, where he was talking about the core foundations of democracy. And some of the things that he complained about, are things that are still evident within our polity. So one would say that after 26 years, Nigeria's democracy does reflect some progress. And we can't argue that. There are progress that we have made, and we will talk about the progress. But our democracy still remains a democracy without democrats. It's a democracy without a democratic culture. and one with very limited development. We're just experiencing a system that is marked by electoral rituals, but it's lacking in values, in institutions and outcomes that define, true governance. So let's look at what progress have we made. To a large extent, when you think about electoralism, when you think about the conduct of elections, we've seen since 1998, or since 1999 till date, we've had successive elections. Yes, so we can see, yes, we've experienced some uninterrupted, whether civilian rule or democratic rule. So that itself is progress. We've also seen alternation of power from one particular political party to another political party. And these transitions of power, from one incumbent to an opposition candidate, it's really a democratic milestone because we've seen the fact that despite, the competitive nature of those elections, we've not, descended to any form of violence or political instability. We've also seen some measure of legal reforms. And there have been amendments to our constitution that strengthens our institutions. We've seen, some measure of government programs that addresses the concerns of citizens. But the big question is, are we where we are? Are those aspirations of those who fought for our democracy, have those aspirations been met? My answer is no. Yes, democracy is a journey. But if you look across board, do we have Democrats in today's Nigeria? Or what do you have? Individuals who want political power, not to use same to advance the development of the people. So when you look at the socioeconomic profile of Nigerians, in the last 26 years, has it improved? It's a big question that needs to be answered. When you think about a democratic culture, you simply have at different levels, both at the national and the local level, the question of people who have power, who have repository, who have political power, do not have, the temperament and even the attributes and of tolerance, of dissent. You can't say we are a democracy if we don't tolerate dissent. We are gradually gravitating into a one-party state. What that simply tells you is that in the last 26 years, all the so-called political associations that pride themselves as political parties are completely weak. Because this cross-carpeting is happening because across board, you have weak political parties. And then when you look at the role of media and civil society, and this democracy that we celebrate today, after MKO Abiola and all those who fought for return to democracy, we need to celebrate the media, we need to celebrate citizens, and we need to celebrate civil society. That we're still a democratic nation today, it's because of these three different actors working to ensure that constitutionalism and the rule of law is upheld is the reason why we still have conversations about democracy today. Because left for the political class, they prefer a plutocracy as opposed to a democracy that delivers the development, which is food on the table, security, and then the infrastructure that is required to address or provide social benefits.
Mr. Akintobi, let's come back to you. I've always been concerned about our democracy, and I'm happy that we've done 26 years, and I hope that we keep going for the rest of history. But if you look back, you will see that the civilians have always been responsible for eroding democracy, which is why this conversation is very important. And that's why we ask the question whether or not democracy is safe in the hands of the current crop of politicians. The military don't just jump in. From the time they came in 66 to the time they came in, of all the time they came in 83 and all of that, there's something that the civilian authorities were doing wrong to the detriment of the society in that sense. And we can go on and on and on as far as this is concerned. So, Mr. Akintobi, I want you to also maybe piggyback on where Mr. Aitodo has stopped on the issue of the managers of this democracy, the current crop of politicians, is a mixed bag of everything. Some may be Democrats, some are pseudo-Democrats, some are intellectuals, some are narcissists, some are megalomaniacs. I don't know which portion is more than the other. What's your characterization of the handlers of this democracy, and what are the warnings we should give to all of them? Because what I see, and what we're looking at, is a mess of the system. One person playing a game in two parties, or multiple people doing all of this. We saw it in 2023. It's just a joke.
When you look at today's politician and you look at yourself in the mirror, there's no difference between the politician and you. So when you ask yourself and you define politicians as megalomaniacs and every other sort of expletive in the dictionary, we're essentially pointing the finger back at ourselves, because the politicians come from within our midst, and their values are a reflection of our collective values as well. So I think that the safety, security, and sustainability of democracy is based on the individuals. It's based on how engaged we are with the political process, how enlightened we are, and how much we hold our politicians accountable. I think today's Nigerian individual is more alert to the dangers of truncating democracy to where they won't allow it to happen. I think we know well enough to be able to speak out. My co-panelist mentioned earlier about civil society organizations, about the media, about citizens. All these are checks and balances against the excesses of politicians. That's not to say that they won't power grab, they won't be corrupt, they won't be self-interested. The average Nigerian politician is in it out of self-interest and not there to serve the interest of the larger public. So without a doubt, but I think there's enough checks and balances in the system that hold them accountable and begin to demand of them certain standards. Of course, some will fall through the cracks, and we've seen that happen with many of our politicians. But at this point in our nation's evolution, I cannot see us deteriorating to a point that democracy will be totally unsafe in the hands of the people we've entrusted the suffrages with today. Granted, it's quite onerous to say that those who are in office got there legitimately, or there are proper choices for office, or that there were not shenanigans involved in how they got there. But now that they're there, I believe we have enough institutions in place to hold them in check. I believe there's an incestuous relationship within the elite. The political elite are the problem of the country, not the grassroots, not even the ethnic, religious element of our politics. No, the real problem with Nigerian politics comes from the elite. And I think that a groundswell of mass engagement of the public is already occurring, and you can see it in uprisings like the Kwankwasia movement in Kano in the last election, where you see mass engagement, mass togetherness, making a point and making their presence and their authority felt. So I think that we overemphasize the risk. For example, I don't think a one-party state is possible in Nigeria. I don't think so. I think we're too divergent. I think we're too marginalized. We're too separated. Yes, it looks like everybody is suddenly defecting to the ruling party now. It looks like the PDP is in disarray, Labour Party, there's infighting, and there's all kinds of cross-carpeting going on, and there's all this talk about, oh, we're drifting towards a one-party state. I don't see that ever happening in Nigeria, because we are not a homogeneous blob. We are heterogeneous. We have different ideas, different values, all the things that come to play in politics differ among us as a people. Political parties are just vehicles to actualize ambitions. And once you see that the party you are in can't propel you into office, you're wasting your time in that party, and you'll find a greener pasture that can actualize your ambition. And the moment that ambition is actualized, you discover that there's no actual loyalty to any party per se. Our democracy will evolve to a point to where we are loyal to an ideology. At this point, we're only loyal to our stomachs. We're not. We don't have common values that tie us together as a group. We're loyal to stomach infrastructure, and stomach infrastructure is available everywhere. So it's the one that can actualize that for you that you will pursue. So I don't necessarily see cross-carpeting, even though it's betrayal and it's treachery, and I don't subscribe to it, but I don't necessarily see it as risking our democracy to the point that it could truncate it. I don't think at this point that we have any worries about these 26 uninterrupted years being interrupted, because I think we've entrenched democracy in Nigeria well enough to a point that it just needs to now continue to grow and develop.
Mr. Akintobi, let's take it to Mr. Itodo. So, Mr. Itodo, you can see Mr. Akintobi is a mix of, yes, we have a problem, but let's be optimistic. He doesn't see possibility. Well, it's a position he has held. We can go back in history to see how some of these things play out eventually and what trickles down. So one of the things he's raised is to the effect that we are more like one of the challenges we're dealing with, even from the time we're amalgamated. It feels like we're a disparate cluster forced into one homogeneous template. And so once, time and again, especially during electoral cycles, we'll see that fault line being amplified and accentuated in that sense, and we begin to fight ourselves and all of that. But he said, look, the democracy will not collapse 26 years down the line. That is a prayer for everybody. But a sense of justice, a sense of inclusion, sense of belonging. Section 14 of the Constitution used that word, sense of belonging. How do we build a society where whatever decision is made, everybody feels like I had a sense of belonging such that I am on the table? It's just that this idea that ran, that is carried on by the society, I was not able to mobilize enough numbers to advance my own idea, so I'll do better next time. So what I'm saying in essence is we have a problem with the political class. How do we fix it?
No, I think that's a valid question. And I think it's important to note that we're all optimists, and we strongly believe that democracy is a journey, and it's about competition. It's about competition of ideas. It's a struggle, I must say. And I think we're having this conversation because we believe that things can actually work. In the same vein, when democracies collapse, they don't collapse accidentally. They don't collapse in one day. It's the gradual erosion of democratic principles. So if anyone is waiting for democracy to collapse completely, it's not going to happen. But it's a process. So it begins with state capture. A situation where one individual or a set of individuals capture what you call the agencies of protection within a democratic construct. And what are these agencies of protection? The legislature is an agency of protection in a democracy, because what the legislature does, it keeps the executive in check. It ensures that the exercise of executive powers are within the bounds set by the Constitution. In a case where the legislature, whether it's at the state or at the national level, is unable to call the executive to order when it exercises overbearing powers or when it takes actions that are at variance with public interest, what you simply have is a democracy that has no accountability. And that you begin to say that democracy is being eroded because some of those principles of checks and balances are not upheld. Where the parliament, where legislature, approves executive proposals and bills without any form of scrutiny, or when the legislature weaponizes democratic instruments to protect the executive, it is not protecting, interest of the public, as the case may be. And so when you think about managing our diversity, I say that that's one thing we've done poorly. And one beauty of democracy is it has the inherent mechanism that encourages what? Diversity management. A cardinal democratic value is inclusion. And so, to what extent has there been a representation? Because when you look across the entire country, there are sections of our country who believe that they are not part of decision making. And the question is, are there constitutional safeguards that ensures that this category of people are included, or they are or they participate in decision making? Look at the legislature. And I use the legislature as a classic example because often we focus on the executive. And let's look at the state. How many times do parliamentarians or legislators consult with their people on certain public policy related issues? It's just few. In cases where there are public hearings, there's not sufficient information out there in public for people to participate. So these are the issues. When you also look at power sharing, and by power sharing, I mean devolution of powers. Until recently, that the Supreme Court granted financial or strengthens financial autonomy for local governments, there was total collapse of local governance at the state level. Why? Because of the overbearing influence of governors who have captured the entire infrastructure at the local government level, and it's unable to deliver development to the people. So how are we sharing power between the federal and the state to the local government to encourage and enhance participation? The other point is when you think about power sharing, politicians have this arrangement, whether they call it zoning, in terms of political representation. The fundamental question, across board is, since 1999 till date, have we addressed those structural inequities that keep certain sections of our country marginalized? My answer is no. We've paid lip service to those issues. That is why you still have those contestations and agitations from different parts of the country that they don't feel included. And if democracy is hinged on inclusion and you still have people feeling excluded, then something is wrong about the way we are operating democracy, not democracy itself.
And you've really begun to touch on, the next and most ideal point of the conversation when you talk about devolution of powers. And, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Olisa Agbakoba, has released a document. The title escapes me now, but there are some high points of some of what he said in that document when he said, development under this administration cannot be truly meaningful with the system of government because it cannot be topmost to the bottom, but from the bottom and then it reaches everyone. And he said in that document, Mr. Itodo, the president can immediately transfer specific functions to state and local government through executive orders. He also says in that document, the National Assembly can utilize sections 4, subsection 1, and sections 315, subsection 1, subsection 1A of the Constitution to replace the 1999 Constitution and prioritize devolution of powers and fiscal federalism. Pretty much saying that our current federalism is pseudo, is a phantom federalism. Can this approach to speedy constitutional amendment, is it possible under this administration? Do you sense, Mr. Itodo, that this can be achieved?
I think that there's no doubt that we have a precedent, at least for the first time. Well, not necessarily the first time, because President Buhari, did pass executive order on direct allocation to local governments. But we've seen actions from the current president is geared towards strengthening local government system. The National Assembly is also, considering the constitutional amendment bill that strengthens local governance. So if you take these actions, you can say in terms of the body language, yes, there's reason to believe that there's commitment towards this. However, when you think about the implementation of the Supreme Court's judgment, the time it took to implement and how it's been implemented, it gives us serious cause for worry. But the actual problem is at the states. And the question is, are the governors willing to cede some of their powers to the local governments? The current position that I have seen is that the governors are reluctant to promote or advance any reforms that empowers local government. They still want to control local governments, which reinforces this debate as to the different tiers of government that we have. Is it the federal and the state and the local governments, or we have only two component units, the states and the federal? I think that we need to underscore the fact that, yes, there can't be development if people don't feel governance at the local level, and that is local governments. And so how we advance those reforms are critical. And I hope that the political class will build consensus on this particular issue. And I hope bipartisan consensus, because one of the challenge of our democracy after 26 years is that our political class, whether they're the ruling or the opposition, have not built consensus on fundamental issues of state building. And one of them is local governance. Just building consensus, bipartisan consensus as an instrument of development is a big challenge for our political class. And I hope that on this issue of local governance, they will build consensus and devolve power to the local government in a way that it's sustainable and it delivers development to people at the local level.
You know, some would say the law is what the political class makes it. Mr. Kitobe, I'd like you to respond to that. Do you see a semblance of political will in the disposition of this administration to make devolution of powers possible?
Well, President Tinubu was a champion of this notion of restructuring before he came into office. He was a major advocate of the fact that the political structure needs to be rejigged. But since he's come in, it's been a half-hearted, lukewarm effort to implement real structural adjustment. Yes, he's done some work in terms of strengthening the local government, but I don't think you can achieve much by piecemeal, through a piecemeal approach using executive orders. I think what is required is a wholesale catharsis, whereby you break down the entire structure and rebuild from the ground up. I think if you try and do it by executive orders, as my co-panelist has said, the governors can frustrate it. I remember Governor Soludo doing of Anambra State doing an end run around the Supreme Court decision that insisted on strengthening the local government, and he came up with a diversionary tactic by where he was able to legally circumvent what the Supreme Court ordered the governors to do. So I don't think it's enough to use a piecemeal approach. I think an entire wholesale amendment, and so to achieve that, I think there has to be a sort of constitutional conference, because amending the constitution is not very easy at all. You have to get both houses at the federal level to pass it, then you have to go through the states and get 2/3 of the state houses of assembly to accept it as well. So I think there's got to be a conversation, a national one, where we all sit down at the table, we all agree on how we want to be governed. Let's remember that our togetherness was imposed, was enforced by people who didn't understand our ways, people who came from somewhere else and for their own selfish interest created a structure that was more beneficial to them than to us. And we've been trapped in that structure since even before 1960 independence. So we've now come to terms with the fact that this doesn't really work best for us. The best times Nigeria has had, the very best times Nigeria has had, was post-independence, before the first military interregnum, and that's because we were running a regional structure where each region had its own resources, was allowed to develop at its own pace, where governance was internal, and they just each region just paid royalties to the center and relied on the center for security of our borders, foreign affairs, and things that couldn't be handled at the local level. And that was when Nigeria actually made giant strides. I mean, if you think about the fact that Western Nigeria got television before countries in Europe. Chief Obafemi Awolowo set up the Western Nigeria television service way before countries in Europe had television. In Western Europe, for that matter, I'm not even talking about the Eastern Bloc. So you can see the kind of progress that's possible when power is devolved to the local units. In fact, the more local the power is diffused, the better development and growth will be. So even at the state level, it's still too distant from the people. So the bulk of the power needs to really be at the local government level. And I don't think you can achieve that through random executive orders here and there that probably will have minimal effect. And so we need to sit down, negotiate our togetherness, come up with a structure that works for everybody. The way God created humanity is that we all have different abilities, different talents, and we will all have different approaches to life and have different strengths and different paces. So each region will do better if they hold their destinies in their own hands individually and are able to work to their own betterment individually. Nigeria is a large and complex country. It's nigh impossible to try to run it as a homogeneous bloc. I've said that earlier. So if it can be politically and economically divided into its constituent units, we'll be better off.
Yeah, complex but not impossible. If there's anything, those would be the gleanings from this conversation. We must thank you very much, Mr. Samson Itodo, Executive Director, Yaga Africa, and Mr. Dayo Akitobi, Media Analyst. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming through on this special Democracy Day edition.
Thank you, and happy Democracy Day.
And happy Democracy Day to you too.
Thank you.
And there's more to come on the program. We'll be taking a short break. When we return, we'll be reviewing your thoughts about some of the trends on social media. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back. Before we get to our next conversation that has to do with some gentlemen, military men, colonels in that sense, in 1995, they were alleged to be involved in that phantom coup. And they've written an open letter to the president saying, look, the country needs to look in our direction after about 30 years in the waiting because we're falsely accused and all the things we lost in that sense, let it be restored to us. They said they've been making these attempts for many years and it hasn't yielded any fruit. So being the president being one of the persons that were in the trenches with Nadeko as one of the vanguard of fighting for democracy and the struggle, they feel that it is time for the president, just like Abiola was recognized by President Muhammadu Buhari. They are saying that they were falsely accused in that phantom coup and their entitlements, a compensation, the recognition. In fact, an apology from the Nigerian state. We're going to have some of the collective in that set of military persons joining us in just a moment. So it's going to be an important conversation we'd like to be part of. We will allow them tell their story as briefly as possible and then what they're asking the president to do as we throw in questions. But let's bring you some trends we've been following, which was one of the things that happened yesterday, and that has to do with the president of the Federal Republic, talking to Nyesom Wike, who is going to be commissioning a lot of projects. Started, I think, 2 days ago. He's going to be doing that for, I think, about more than 2 weeks or so. And the president told him, look, the man is not a member of my party yet, but whenever he's ready to come, we'll welcome him and we'll be enjoying and dancing while the opposition will be, you know, not happy. Let's take a listen to the president.
We have somebody in Nyesom Wike. He's not a member of my party. Not yet. But the day he changes his mind and registered with Progressive, we will welcome him. Because we will enjoy him in singing. As he dey pain us, he dey sweet us.
As he dey pain them, he dey sweet us. As he dey sweet us, he go dey pain them.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the president got the lyrics mixed up. But you get what he was saying. As he dey pain them, he go dey sweet us. That's in Nyesom Wike's signature song that they sing for him whenever he's doing some of this is commissioning. But Bukola, if I ask you straight, is Nyesom Wike not a member of the APC?
Am I a politician? Journalist? But Jeffrey, I am a journalist. I'm not a politician.
Well, he's a member of the APC in spirit, not in body. Because, of course, he works for the president in his cabinet. He supports the president without any apology. He said the coalition will fail. The president will be re-elected because he believes in the president's capacity to deliver the country out of the conundrum and the challenges we're facing. So, and well, he's still, but he's a card-carrying member of the PDP.
If we have, by my count now, about 3 repentant anti-Tinumbuists from 2022, well, Mr. Nyesom Wike, if he defects tomorrow,
it's not a surprise.
It won't be a surprise.
No, in my head, he's already a member of the APC. It's just a matter of time. That's how my brain is working. But the president has spoken and said, Nyesom Wike, in case you're not thinking, start thinking. Well, I think maybe the PDP will be very happy to see him move, because eventually it's okay. This man has been giving us wahala. Because if you want to fight in Nyesom Wike, you have to be ready for the long haul. It's not somebody who fights and runs away. He fights and takes it the entire haul. So if you're not ready for the combat, don't even get it started. That's the kind of person he is. So, Bukola, you have the next one.
Mr. President only made a formal announcement of a series, I believe, of informal events that have been taking place behind closed doors since 2023. By the way, if you consider the results of the presidential results, the results of the presidential election of Rivers State in the 2023 election. But talking about what you're also talking about online, there's also that event from yesterday that transpired at the airport. Senator Adams Oshiomhole, former national chairman of the APC, was reportedly said to have missed his flight somewhat, and this led to some form of ruckus at the airport. But let's see what exactly happened.
No, that's what they are saying, that it's overbooked. That's how is the answer?
There you have it. The senator representing Edo North was said to have missed his flight, and then this led to him disrupting flight schedules at the Lagos airport. But Air Peace, by the way, has responded to the position expressed by Senator Adams Oshiomhole, saying that they're challenging him to provide evidence of its officials shortchanging passengers. Air Peace later alleged that the senator clashed with its staff and disrupted flight operations simply because he missed his flight. Jeffrey.
Yes, Senator Oshiomhole, this is the Air Peace position. I think this release was made before the senator's statement. But the senator has said that, he said, according to him, yesterday I arrived 40 minutes early for my 6:50 p.m. or a.m., I guess he wanted to say, flight. My luggage was already checked in, but I was told they had stopped issuing boarding passes. Meanwhile, I saw others arriving after me, allowed to board. So I don't know who is saying the truth here and who is lying. They say he came late. The senator said I came early. Okay, let's say accept without conceding. People that came after me, I still saw them boarding the flight. So why couldn't that? But he said she had to stand to his ground and say, look, this is not going to happen. So I think it's a question of all evidences. I'm sure there are CTV in that airport area. It's just to pull out the CTV. we'll know exactly when the senator arrived. So that will establish who is saying the truth as to arrival or not arrival. And then the CCTV can also establish the effect whether people are allowed to board that came after the senator's arrival. So this is why we advocate for CCTV everywhere. CCTV is going to be the biggest closure to this argument, because now Airpeace has a position, Senator didn't arrive early, all of the things they said, Senator said I arrived early, let's say I even arrived late, for instance, okay, you allow people coming, but he said he arrived 40 minutes, it was very specific, 40 minutes before before the flight, but he wasn't allowed to check in, so he had to disrupt it, block the departure for nobody to leave. So if they pull out the CCTV, we hope the airport authority can pull out the CCTV for us to see whose position is right, and then this can be resolved. Well, there are other ways amicably of seeking redress. We must make that point as well, Jeffrey. Besides, you know, being disagreeable, blocking exits and not allowing processes to run smoothly. I think that was maybe a bit extreme. Yeah, that was extreme, and we expect more from, you know, a senator, a former governor, and a former national chairman of the party. That should be said. That point should be taken. But let's also establish that if indeed it is true that Airpeace was allowing the checking in of other passengers after the arrival of the senator, then we must also call out Airpeace for that. But Airpeace has also said in that statement released that none of its staff ever extorted any passenger. It said, in fact, no ticket was sold after the closure of checking on that flight, because this has become a public issue, a matter of public concern. Evidence will be required from both sides to prove what was true and what was false. But, you know, this is the essence of citizen journalism, such that, you know, such incidents can be put in proper perspective, and, you know, precedent can be set such that negative occurrences should not happen again. Perhaps when we investigate, we may find out that there's enough blame to go around as far as all of the issues are concerned. But for me, I still stand on that CCTV part, the conduct of the senator, whether or not they were allowing people in, which is totally unacceptable. If Airpeace can do that, especially for someone of that stature, that standing, that would not be acceptable. But if that's not what happened, then the senator may be blamed for some of the extreme measures he took. So right now, we don't know who is saying the truth. That's why I want to backtrack a bit to wait for a final outing as to, let's say, first establish timing. As soon as we establish timing, we can now know how to cast blames in that sense, and then know who was right and who was wrong. But I think this can be resolved amicably. Because what he was saying by extension, and which I want Airpeace to respond to adequately, is to the fact that these are things that airlines do against passengers. So deliberately carrying out certain kinds of conduct to get more money from passengers. It has to be investigated. That accusation is heavy. Because he cited an instance of a particular lady who missed her flight, who had to now pay from about 100,000 plus to about 200,000 plus. So he's going to petition the aviation minister. So I don't know who's saying the truth here. Let's just get the CCTV and we'll be able to know who's to blame eventually. But from what we see, there's enough blame to go around against the senator and against Airpeace as far as this conversation is concerned. But we hope that this can be resolved. We'll take a quick break now. When we come back, as soon as we get ready with the retired colonels, we'll get them on the conversation. But we also have some young people that will be joining us. You know, we talk about democracy, the future. Let's now talk to the successor generation, the people that will hold the heritage of our country in the nearest future. Join us again in just a moment. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's bring in the young persons and young people into this conversation as far as June 12th, Democracy Day that we're celebrating across the country is concerned. They are the custodians of the future, and they are the successor generation. And it's always important to bring them to the table to have a seat and make their own contribution to national development. We've been joined for now by Mr. Randy Peter. Yes, that's what we'll call him. Mr. Aka himself is an advocate for New Nigeria. He's at the vanguard of campaigning for electoral reform and fix INEC. Mr. Peters, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. An absolute pleasure, sir.
I can see the new look is being consistent these days in terms of your comradeship, because this is a serious business. Maybe you help us with reflecting on what you think or know about what this day means to you and by extension to young Nigerians.
Thank you very much. I mean, June 12th, the question that all of us as Nigerians must ask ourselves is, what is the significance of this day? Why do we celebrate June 12th? Democracy Day in Nigeria used to be May 29th, but it was moved to June 12th by the former president, Muhammadu Buhari. And the question we must ask ourselves, as I have rightly said, is why June 12th? Because we felt that an election took place that was seen to be free, fair, and credible. But the unfortunate reality of Nigeria is that we must ask ourselves the question, is Nigeria truly a democracy? Because if Nigeria is a democracy and we are interested in symbolizing it by celebrating it yearly, so why are we not committed to the same action that made us choose June 12th as a day to mark Democracy Day, which is free, fair, credible, and peaceful election, which is supposed to be the hallmark of every democracy? So is Nigeria truly a democracy, or it is a democracy that is led or not led by Democrats? So that is the situation where we find ourselves, where Nigerians today are still struggling to find out what exactly is the meaning of democracy. How well has it benefited us? How strong are the institutions of our democracy? What exactly have the young persons been able to benefit in terms of, institutional reform, the trust in law enforcement, in the judiciary, the kind of educational systems we have, the health infrastructure that is available, the economy as it is. But most importantly, the ability for young people to choose their leaders in a free, fair, and credible manner, which is the hallmark of every democracy. So Nigeria needs to answer that question.
All right, let's also bring in our second guest on the program, who is also a young person joining the panel, Kemi Asekun, media consultant and member of the All Progressives Congress, joining us virtually. Kemi, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
It's a pleasure to be here. A very good morning to you and happy Democracy Day in Nigeria. June 12th is a very important day in our democracy.
Just hold on, Kemi, just a moment, so that I can throw in my question. So I know you're already trying to respond to the question of June 12th, but my question will be, from where you sit, that's very important to me, because you cannot give what you don't have. What does this day mean to you as a young person? And if you're reflecting, what are you really reflecting on?
Okay. What does this day mean to me? June 12th means to me that finally we have a democracy and a foundation to build our democracy on. The oldest democracies in the world that are doing well today, some of them are centuries old. And when you look at the other forms of government, you would realize that whether we like it or not, democracy is still the best form of government, because it affords everybody who is willing to put forth who they would want as their leader. Some people may say that democracy is the tyranny of the majority, but the truth about it is there are places in the world where how you feel or what you feel about the current leader that you have will not be taken into any form of context. All you have to do is do whatever it is that they ask you to do, and then life goes on like that. We had that in the military during the military reign in Nigeria, before we had this democracy, where you could even be afraid to talk about somebody sitting beside your friend because you don't know who is who. Today, there is freedom of speech, even though I personally think that it is being overused, because there must be responsibility after speech. But today, everybody can say whatever it is that they would like to say without the fear that they will get missing at any point. That is the blessing of what a democracy does. However, sometimes our people look forward to having a magic wand, that changes everything. Unfortunately, democracy is what we all must build. And that is why, as a young person, I encourage other young people, regardless of which party you decide to pitch your tent with, if we're going to make Nigeria a better place and make our democracy stronger than it is right now, young people have to get involved. And the only way to get involved in a democracy, right, actively, is by joining a political party. So people will say that politics is dirty and they want to stay outside of politics, but then you want to blame the politicians for being inside. And that's where we have problems as young people. Let us come together. Let us join the political parties that fit our ideals, and let us understand that there is no magic wand coming to fix this democracy for us. There is no angel coming to, there's no angel coming to fix this democracy for us. Neither will there be a magic wand that changes everything. If we must have a country to bequeath to our children and those yet unborn, right, we almost put in the work. And it's not about being angry at the government, the present day government, right? As it is, the leader of our party will say that power is not served a la carte. You need to put in the work. You need to get into the fray. Speaking outside, will not do anything for anybody. We all need to get involved. And that is how we will build this democracy. So what does June 12 mean to me? June 12 for me is that day that Nigerians rejected the military completely and understood that for us to move our nation forward, we have to have a democratic government where we have a say in who is in power. Am I happy at the democracy that we have today? Well, it's not yet Uhuru, but I'm glad that for the first time in several years, since June 12, we have some of those who fought against the military in power, and they're doing the bits and the best that they can. The light at the tunnel may seem very far away, but at least we can see a glint. And so for me, I'll say we're a work in progress, a young democratic nation, and we're building towards something.
Did say at the beginning of the program that the biggest value of democracy, which is liberty, cannot be preserved without knowledge. And speaking of knowledge, we're celebrating Democracy Day today, and the biggest symbol of democracy is MKO Abiola. And ahead of 2023, the All Progressives Congress was criticized for plagiarizing or copying and pasting Hope 93 manifesto of MKO Abiola. Randy, I'm coming to you with this now before I take you to Kemi. What do you see in the workings of the implementation of this administration's Hope 93 agenda that bears semblance to the gains of the democracy that MKO Abiola fought for and wanted to implement with Hope 93?
Thank you very much. In fact, it is a very beautiful way to reference, because we have persons in power today who at some point were freedom fighters and standing for democracy. But if you want to know the actual state of where they stand in terms of implementing what Hope 93 should mean and what June 12 should signify, let us throw a challenge to the current president of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and the Senate president to come out clearly in Nigeria today and make a broadcast that I, President Tinubu, believes in free, fair, credible, and peaceful elections, and that come 2027, I am working to reform INEC to ensure that the will of the people will prevail. Because the significance of June 12, 1993, as my colleague or my co-guest has rightly said, was that the people rejected the military and decided to take destiny in our own hands, meaning power is supposed to be vested in the people. And then we begin to have checks and balances. But today, as we see in Nigeria, we almost have a situation where the legislative arm of government seems like a subordinate to the executive arm of government. There is absolute distrust in the judicial arm of government. For 2 consecutive years, when the president goes to submit his budget, the National Assembly welcomes him with his political mantra, on their mandate they shall fall or sit. So we have a situation where the principles of checks and balances that should exist in a democracy are completely eroded, fighting the corruption that should be the bane of the day have been pushed to the side. And in the words of one former national chairman, when you come to our party, your sins are forgiven. There is almost no opposition party as it is today in Nigeria, and it's almost impossible to register a new one. So every politician and everybody wants to defect to the ruling party. In fact, the current Senate president was quoted to have said that as at 2027, there may be no opposition in his own state. So you now ask yourself the question, what exactly was Hope 93? What are the templates to implementing and getting a democracy that is viable? Is it a democracy without opposition? What is the opposition in the home state of the president in Lagos State, where he was a former governor and has been de facto leader for more than 20 years and counting? So when you look at the entire fiasco and scenario, you will see that there is a great level of mischief amongst political class in Nigeria, where we want to celebrate a day but fail to hold ourselves to the dictates and the principles of that day. Imagine someone who is a core Muslim telling you that I do not believe in the 5 pillars of Islam, I do not believe in the prophet, the holy prophet Muhammad, or a Christian telling you I do not believe in Jesus Christ. If you must believe in a democracy, democracy is built on free, fair, and credible elections because power must come from the people. So anybody who is talking about democracy and is not committing to free and fair elections where power comes from the people, where the people can hold you accountable and say, if we are dissatisfied, we can vote you out. If you are not committed to such a system of electoral reform and stopping irregularities, then we are just trying to put the cart before the horse and we are just deceiving ourselves. So Hope 93 and 2023 today or 2025, what exactly has been the implementation of those aspects vis-a-vis achieving a democracy that is truly powered by the people?
Right. Peter. So let me come to you, Kemi, quickly now with the same question. Even if the Renewed Hope agenda were copy and paste, has it held true to the ideals of the Hope 93 manifesto of late MKO Abiola?
Let me first start by saying that the Renewed Hope agenda was not copy and paste. Indeed, if you do have a copy of that agenda, a copy of that manifesto, so to speak, that the president put together, you would realize that virtually everything that he did say that he was going to do in that particular manifesto is what he is implementing today. And the document is there online for people to see. Does it reflect what MKO Abiola wanted to do? The times have changed and the times are different. Even at that, one of the things I did say earlier was the fact that there is no magic wand to fix the rot that has crept up on us since 1993. The unfortunate thing that many Nigerians have come to see, with our democracy and with the miracle centers that are happening in Nigeria, is that people believe that there is a miracle to fixing it. Some of the things that have been done by the current president were done because there was no other way out. People ask that where is the savings from subsidy, but they forget that we were actually borrowing to subsidize. Now, the Renewed Hope agenda, as the Hope 93, at the time when Abiola was making some of the promises that he made for Hope 93, one of the things he did mention, was that there will be education, free education and all of that. Today, at that time, our population was far less, probably about 50% less than what it is today. But here we are today in the year 25, with a burgeoning population of young people who have access to the internet. And so one of the things the president is doing, to the best of my knowledge, is the 3MTT, where you can learn online and be able to sell your skills internationally. For me, that's part of the Renewed Hope we signed for. There is the part of it where the young technical colleges that have gone comatose are now being reopened for people to come in, because the blue-collar jobs in Nigeria have completely gone haywire. Many people are importing people to come and do those blue-collar jobs. But now there is a system in place that if you want to go to a technical college, you will even get paid, right? I think about 45,000 to be able to access that. Now, unfortunately, like I said, many Nigerians are looking forward to a miracle that is a one-size-fits-all solution for everything, and that's not going to happen. What we require is a step-by-step movement towards the hope we're looking forward to. And like I usually say, if you're looking for hope, you will find it. Some people have found that renewed hope in this government, and they're saying that, okay, there's a semblance of the Hope 93 in what we currently have today. Now, there was I think the gentleman mentioned the aspect of free and fair elections. The fact that something is repeated over and over again will not necessarily make it the truth. And that's another thing we need to be careful with and careful of as young people. The last elections, for the first time since 1999, the APC, which is...
And just when she was about to make a point from the last election.
We can see get her in. Kemi, are you there?
Are you there, Kemi?
I am here.
All right, land on your thoughts.
Land on that point.
You were freezing. You have 30 seconds.
Okay,
here.
I don't know at which point. Okay, I don't know at which point I froze, but I wanted to just add that there is no election that is freer and fairer than an election where the candidate who had never lost since 1999, that particular place in which is his home state, actually lost, and the election was won by another party. I think that as a people, sometimes we need to sit back and truly ask ourselves the questions that matter and see things for what they are. If Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who has never lost Lagos in the last election, I don't think there is any election that is freer and fairer than that. And I think we should be fair to each other too.
All right, Kemi, thank you so much. Kemi Asekong Shitu, member of the APC Media Consultant. Peter Aka, Randy Peters, we call him, joining us from our Abuja studio. Thank you both for your position. The whole idea for this conversation is for young people to have a seat on the table and navigate the paths of their future. We have a lot to fix. We've made some progress, which is why I asked personal question before party position. It was a very deliberate question, but I must thank you both. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back. Let's get to the next conversation. Bukola, you have this one.
Yes, indeed. And, earlier on, some of our guests did indeed applaud the media, for being hard at work, bringing this democracy, a very shared treasure. But there were other fallouts of, the fight for democracy. And that was an alleged coup, leveled against some members of the military. Of course, you also remember the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo himself, was jailed and he was later released. So who are these other servicemen that was alleged to have participated in a coup in 1995 and in 1997? And what is their current state? Let's hear from them, from some of their representatives now. And we have joining us on the program Colonel Emmanuel Ndubeze, who joins us via Zoom from Umuahia. And joining us also very shortly would be Colonel Olusegun Oloruntoba, the Olugbede of Gbede, Ijumu local government area in Kogi State, who will also be joining us virtually from Kogi State. Let's start off this conversation now and with Colonel Emmanuel Ndubeze. Good morning, sir, and thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Right, so let's get right into it. Colonel Emmanuel, tell us exactly what happened. Take us down memory lane.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. After the elections of June 12, after the elections of June 12, there were a lot of controversies which led to its annulment. And around August 1993, the president wanted to know if the army wanted him to continue as president. And we said no, on August 2nd, 1993. We said no, the gentleman has won the election. The barracks voted for him. The civilians voted for him. And he should be installed as the president. And we didn't know that there were others who had different plans to hijack the government. And we were marked innocently. We were arrested, treated in the most inhumane way. But we give glory to God that we survived. That we survived did not mean all of us survived. Some of us died in detention. Some of us died after the detention when we were released because of the traumatic and brutal treatment meted to them. But we give glory to God. People like General Shehu Yaradua, he encouraged us to live in the prison, but unfortunately, he died. And after we were released, we were granted pardon by General Abdul Salam, and we are grateful to him because he knew that nothing happened. There was nothing like a coup. It was just a matter of opinion, and they felt we were disloyal. And that was what happened. And when General Obasanjo became the president, instituted the Oputa panel. And the Oputa panel came out and said there was nothing like a coup. Compensate these young men. Ask, give them all that they desire, their ranks, their promotions, and that has been there. Nothing has been done. Many of our people are still dying, hoping against hope. And we are happy that when General Buhari became president, he came and declared that, yes, Abiola deserves to be president because he won. And he gave him the Grand Commander of the Federal Republic. And we are very happy about that. But unfortunately, some of us who went through and suffered some of these brutalities because of our stand of making sure he became president are forgotten. But we are happy that democracy is at work. But we are asking the nation and the president to look at some of us who worked behind the scenes, who worked putting our lives in danger. And people don't seem to remember us. But we give glory to God that we are alive. And we hope that Mr. President will take a look at Oputa panel and make sure that he implements the recommendations of that panel. We keep on saying our government is a law-abiding government, but when the court rules or the tribunal rules, they don't implement it. And that is where I fault our government. Right. Some of these young men who are detained with us are gone. They suffered. People like Wadebe, they can never remember Wadebe again because he was virtually killed in that investigation. People like my friend Notoba, who is now the Lubede of Bedede, I know he is alive by the grace of God. People like Bello Fadele, and of course, we won't forget people like Gabriel Ajayi, who is late now. These are people who did nothing but tell the truth, and the truth became sin. And we are bearing the burden, hoping that one day the truth will really prevail.
All right,
so we give glory to God that we have an opportunity like this to tell the nation that we have been wronged, and we should be compensated. We should be paid for our sufferings.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring in the KBSC. Colonel Oloro Toba joins us virtually. Colonel Oloro Toba, thank you so much for coming on the program, sir. Can you hear me, sir? Colonel Oloro Toba, can you hear me, sir?
I'm hearing you loud and clear.
All right, fantastic. So your colleague, Colonel Ndubeze, has spoken, and he's spoken quite well. So for the record, and for those who are not familiar, you were part of those that were falsely alleged to be involved in that coup, what was called the Phantom Coup. And for 30 years, you've been trying to get some reprieve in that sense for being accused of what you did not do. And you said, according to Ndubeze, you were behind the scene advocating for democracy as military officers, and it cost you a lot. And for 30 years, you've been making a case. I want to read part of your letter, open letter you wrote to the president, so you can help us expatiate. You said, while demanding justice, we are appealing to find favor from your gracious and generous presence, Mr. President. We seek the implementation of the Oputa panel's recommendations, including promotion to our rightful ranks, a letter of apology, and comprehensive rehabilitation. We also request that you endorse the reliefs and compensation recommended by the Oputa panel. Maybe you help us expatiate on this, sir.
Thank you very much. Before I go to the recommendations of the Oputa panel, in any case, my colleague Colonel Ndubeze has given a rundown of what happened. Those of us that were rounded up in 1995, we were rounded up purely on our stance that the June 12th election results must be released and the winner sworn in. I actually, in my own case, our GOC, that is General Officer Commanding, invited all of us who are commanders for a meeting shortly after the election. I made a submission. I said, GOC, sir, if Mr. President General Ibrahim Babangida had a cogent reason why this election should be annulled, he should make a special broadcast to the nation and give us the reasons. And of course, if there was no cogent reason, the results should be released. And Abiola sworn in as president and commander-in-chief. That time I was a commander at 3 Armored Division in Jos. Immediately, because of my submission, which all of my colleagues agreed upon, I was posted away from holding a command, and they sent me to be an instructor at the Command and Staff College, Jaji. To cut long story short, there was nothing like any coup plot by anybody. The most regrettable aspect is that if there had been a real plot and there was an action, and we were captured or killed in action, that would have been a different thing. But to just capture us like chickens when we have done nothing. So on the Oputa panel, there was a public hearing, and at the end of the day, Oputa made far-reaching and symbolic recommendations in our favor. One, that all frivolous charges of treason against us should be quashed by the courts. Two, we should be reinstated and given our appropriate ranks in line with our cosmates in the armed forces. Then three, we should be given a compensation for wrongful detention, torture, deprivation, and debasement. But till today, nothing has been implemented. We tried, even the General Olusegun Obasanjo, who was a co-victim like us for his 8 years, and he actually set up the Oputa panel. At the end, he didn't implement and left. When President Yar'Adua came, he called for the file. He held Council of State on the same issue. The Council of State ratified all recommendations in our favor by Oputa panel. Unfortunately, shortly after that, the president, Yar'Adua, took ill and died. By the time Jonathan came, our case was represented and another petition written on our behalf by Chief Femi Falana. To our greatest surprise, President Jonathan implemented only that of General Oladipo Dia and 4 others, and left the rest of us in the cold till today. General Buhari came, we made presentation. His Minister of Justice and Attorney General at that time, Malami Abubakar, tried his best to get all these things, but to no avail. Now that President Tinubu is on the seat, and he was a co-fighter of June 12th, to the extent that he had to go on exile, we have the view that as our co-victim who was brutalized, we are calling on him to please authorize the implementation of all those reliefs recommended for us by Oputa panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Colonel Manuel, your colleague has just, reeled out the failure of successive administrations to honor the recommendations of the Oputa panel. And it's curious because former President Olusegun Obasanjo himself was jailed as well and alleged to have plotted a coup. There should have been, sympathies from former President Muhammadu Buhari, who himself is a retired general. Why do you think these administrations ignored the implementation of the recommendations of the Oputa panel?
If I'm to sum it up.
Colonel Emmanuel, that's for you now, sir.
Yes, thank you. Okay. I think the problem is the failure of our institutions. The files are there. The people that are supposed to work on them are dilly-dallying. In the case of General Obasanjo, I can understand because he was a victim. He felt he has done enough by setting the Oputa panel. And he felt it might be wrong for him to implement since he was the one who set it up. And I thought, that is my own thinking. He felt that the other succeeding governments should implement it. When we had a meeting with him, he was giving glory to God that we are alive and that he has done that. For General Buhari, I wouldn't know his mind because he too has been a victim. He knows all these things, but I think it's just the failure of our institutions. But all I know is that one day the truth will prevail. And if you remember, when General Babangida launched his book, he made it clear that Abiola won the election and that forces beyond him did not allow him, did the annulment. Well, I look at it as some of the imperfections of our institutions. Our institutions should look at the nation. We should be loyal to our nation, not to individuals, not to persons. We should be loyal to the nation, to the Constitution, and to the rule of law. Oputa has ruled. Nobody appealed against it. Nobody said it was wrong. It was ratified. But the implementation has got, according to my former president, it has got careless. And I think that should be looked into and amended. Because as a matter of fact, if you offend somebody and you don't restitute, it is very wrong.
Okay.
It is very wrong. I cannot speak for them, but for me, they have dealt with us unjustly, And they must make sure that they restitute. That is just simple law of nations.
All
We
right,
are not
Colonel.
asking for too much.
All right, Colonel. I think the message is clear. You've anchored it quite properly. Restitution for the injustice meted out to all of you. So let me come back to Kabiyesi, Olorun Toba. Colonel Olorun Toba, talk to us about how many of you were victims that you can remember. How many are still alive? Because the names I have here that are appended their names or signature to this open letter to the president includes Colonel Lawan Gwadabe. I actually tried to reach out to him as well. Colonel Emmanuel Ndubueze, Colonel Gabriel Ajayi, who is late, Colonel Roland Mokbai, Colonel Edwin Jando, Colonel Babatunde Bello Fadile, Colonel Olusegun Oloruntoba, and I think Commander Dennis Omesa. These are the ones we have. Do we have more names? And how many are still alive? How many are not here?
Actually, among the colonels, both in 1995 and 1997,
Colonel Trobak, we can't hear you anymore. Oh, dear. Can you hear us? All right. Colonel Dubois, Colonel Emmanuel, maybe you can just, we have just a minute more.
Yes. There are some of us who are still alive.
Colonel Jibrin, who is unfortunately is late.
Colonel Toba, we're having issues with your network. So let's Mr. Colonel Ndubueze answer, please. Colonel Ndubueze, please, you have just 30 seconds. Just list the names that we have still alive.
I cannot roll them out now, but quite a number of us are alive. And a lot too have died. I cannot mention their names. I don't know if Colonel Bulu's name is on that list. I can't remember now.
Okay. We just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Out of them, 7 are colonels, including yourself and Colonel Oloruntoba. But I think you sent out your word via the letter, which is why we brought you here to say all of the victims of the alleged coup, the phantom coup of 1995, and all the other ones who are victims who have not been compensated. You say you demand an open apology from the government, implementation of the Oputa panel, and all of that. We must, that's why we brought you, so that the government can hear directly from you. The president will be giving his speech at noon or sometime after noon at the National Assembly. Bukola.
Yes, indeed. Just before we go, if you can do it in 15 seconds, those recommendations, the things you're demanding of the government, just reel them out so that they can hear you now. Colonel Emmanuel, that's for you.
Oh, the recommendations you're talking about?
Yeah, go ahead.
The recommendations, they will compensate us for the brutality. They will promote us to the rank of our mates as at when we are retired. They will take care of our medical rehabilitation. And another recommendations which I cannot lay my hands on now. But these are the basic things.
All right.
And write us later apology.
All right. We must thank you very much, Colonel Emmanuel Ndubueze and Colonel Olusegun Oloruntoba, retired colonels who were falsely alleged to have planned a coup during the administration of former military dictator Sani Abacha. Thank you so much for your time, and you have our best wishes on this Democracy Day anniversary.
Thank you for the opportunity given.
All right, so whilst all of this is happening and preparations for the president's speech at the joint session of the National Assembly, people are protesting across Nigeria, and we understand that some protests taking place in Lagos, Akure. Okay, I think we have the one from Akure. So, and bad governance, that has still been the issue. Bad governance has killed, I can't read everything, the gentleman killed the dreams of Nigerian youths, and it now. So let's see whether we can hear what they're saying.
Protesters in Akure, the Ondo State capital, coming out, to speak against bad governance. Earlier in the week, the hashtag Take It Back movement had planned protests for today, Democracy Day, protests against insecurity, poverty, hardship and hunger. We're going to keep tabs with this protest. We understand they're taking place in key states of the Federation, Lagos, Port Harcourt, the FCT, and we see that it's also holding in Akure, the Ondo State capital. And this is where we touch down on today's edition of the program, this Democracy Day. Don't forget, we're also preparing for the president's speech that will be taking place later today. I believe at noon, we have you covered on Channels Television. And Sunrise Daily is up next. Thank you so much for watching. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Jeffrey Ozonga. Happy Democracy Day. Bye-bye.